What's up everyone? In this series of videos, I've been basically talking about class-based views. We started by looking at how we can convert our function-based views into class-based views using the inbuilt view class or the base view class from which all class-based views inherit. We also looked at the auth views that Django provides for us that make it easy for us to deal with the different things that we may need for an authentication system to work successfully. In this video, I'm going to be showing you the generic views that Django provides that are going to help you to basically manage most of the common tasks that you do when dealing with view classes or view functions. Now, I'm going to make this simple and you'll be able to understand them by the end of this video. Please help me and leave a like on this video. So without further ado, let us get started. So right here in my VS Code, we have a bunch of class-based views, and all these class-based views are inheriting from the view class. So the view class is the base class that all class-based views inherit from. Now Django provides for you this view class to enable you to basically make your views in an object-oriented fashion. So that means we can do stuff such as inheriting. We can inherit all these classes and customize them in whatever way we want. Django also provides for us these generic views that we're actually going to use in this video, and it categorizes them into two categories. Now the first one is the display category. So display views are the ones that help you to basically be able to retrieve or display a certain template. It also allows you to basically have edit views, and those edit views are the second category, which allows you to be able to edit or basically create an item in the database. So I'm going to begin by importing all these generic views. So I'm going to do that by coming at the top of our code right here, and I'll say from Django. So this is going to be from Django, and in this case I'll say dot views dot generic. We are going to import our views. So it's going to be a long list, but let's move slowly. So the first ones I'm going to import are going to be our display views, and in those display views we're going to have the template view that we're going to start with, and then we are also going to have the list view. So after the list view we shall have the detail view, and do not worry, I'm going to walk through this while basically explaining what they do. So we have the detail view, and then we also have the create view. So these are basically the display views, the template view, the list view, and the detail view. We also have the, so these actually can be, let's just leave a comment here and call these the display views. And we can also have our edit views. So these are going to be our edit views. Now in the edit views, we're going to have our first view being the form view. And the second one is going to be the CreateView class, so we are going to import that as well. Then the next one, sorry for this, so this is going to be our CreateView. So I'm just going to simply have our CreateView right here. I'm actually having a problem, I forgot a comma here. So after providing the CreateView, then we're also going to have our UpdateView. So if I say UpdateView, we shall import our UpdateView. Now let's also go ahead and import our DeleteView. So I'll provide our DeleteView right here. So these are basically some or all the classes that Django provides that fall into the category of generic class-based views. And these are going to make it easy for us to implement all the view functions that we have right here. So to begin, let us look at the template view. So the template view is the simplest display view, as it only allows you to display a template and also help you to basically show stuff that is within the template's context. Now, if you're wondering how we're going to do that, all we're going to do is to first of all modify this so that instead of it inheriting from our view class, it actually inherits from our template view class. So let's go ahead and start by modifying it. So the first thing I'm going to do right here, I'm going to implement the class at the top right here. So I'm going to start and say class, and this is going to be our home page view. So this home page view, instead of being a view, just like the one it is right here, we are going to go ahead and make this our template view. Now, when this is a template view, we do not need that much. In fact, we do not even have to specify the HTTP methods. All we have to first do is to define the template that we're going to render. So we see the properties are here. We have the template engine. You can specify the template engine. But in this case, we need the template name. And in this case, we have a template name being index.html. So I'll just copy what we have here and then basically paste it right here. So one thing after doing this, then the next thing is going to be for us to basically get rid of what we have right here. So if we're to look at this, this is basically the definition of the homepage view as defined when we use the view class. However, if we are to just use the template view, then all we shall have is these two lines right here. This will be enough to render the entire view. So what I'll do is to remove what we have right here. So if I save and go back to our server, see if everything is running. So what I'll do is to go back to our app right here and refresh. We shall see that our template is successfully rendered and our tasks are the only thing that is missing. So for us to be able to update the context and include the tasks, because these are going to be wanted on the template, we are going to basically override a certain method that comes with this template view class, and that method is the getContextData method. So when you go back to our code right here, we are going to basically override it. So I'll just come right here and say def, and this is going to be getContextData. So what is going to happen here is the context is basically the dictionary that allows us to pull variables from our backend and then render them into our template. And what this method right here does is to help us to get that data and also modify the context by adding other variables that we may need in our class-based view. So let us go ahead and do that. So one thing I'm going to do is to modify this. So I already have some definition right here. Now, all I have to do is to just come right in here and basically update this. So in this case, what our context is actually a call to super, and this super will be our template view class if you're familiar with object-oriented programming. So if our context is really what we have here, so what you can do is to just come and say that our context is going to be this call to our context data method on our super class. This is just a simple inheritance right here. So if we go ahead and do this, then we can have our context being updated. If you're to notice, there is some type hinting that is being done here, and what we have is that this will return a dictionary that basically has keys that are strings and any other data type. Now I'm going to remove this, but basically what it means is the context is a dictionary, and this getContextData will return the context as a dictionary. So if you are to update your context, then you'll have to use the key. So in this case, if we want to basically include our tasks within our context, we shall say context, and then we shall give a key which is going to be a string. So in this case, it's going to be our tasks. And once we've been able to do that, we can assign these tasks a value, and that is going to be the query of task.objects.all. So once we've been able to do that, I'll save. And since this returns our context, then we shall just come and say return our context. So I'm going to save and hoping that our server is running. So I'll pull up our terminal. So in here we have name any is not defined. Did you mean any? Seems like the server has stopped. So I'll remove this type hints right here, and our server is going to reload. So it's running. If we go back to our app and refresh, we shall now see that our template view is working successfully. So basically what a template view is just a simple class-based view that will render a template and any application or any template context data that is basically concerned with that specific template. And that is just how we can be able to use our template view. Now notice how much code we wrote for the previous view and how less code that we've written for this view. So that basically explains how these generic views can help save you from writing multiple lines while describing what your view classes do. Another view in the display category is going to be our list view. Now the list view is one that allows us to basically render a list of objects within a template. Now you can notice that our home HTML page, or which is our index.html page, is actually rendering a list of tasks just like the one you see right here. So what we're going to do is to actually go ahead and modify our template so that it is a list view. Now you're going to notice how easy using a list view is. All we have to do is to go back in our code. So I'm going to begin by first of all making this from a template view. So I'm going to modify this from a template view to a list view, and we shall still have our template name being the same. So we have to also specify the model. So I'll just come and say that our model is going to be equal to, so we shall have to import our model. So our model is already imported, which is our task model, and this is good. So once we have this, we do not need to even include our get context data method. So I'll remove this method right here. So as long as we have this, if we go and refresh, we shall see that our template is being rendered. However, we cannot see our tasks being rendered. Now the reason for this is the way Django will approach the naming of the tasks in our front end is going to differ from how we expect it. In fact, we need to provide another attribute to the class so that Django knows that what we used in a template is what we have as the objects in our context. Now let me explain this. If we go to our index.html, so I'm going to press Ctrl E in VS Code, and then I'll look for our index.html. What we have is a for loop that loops through this variable or this object list called tasks, and then basically displays a list of tasks. Now if you're to look at that, the name tasks is not being found in our application, in our context. Now for us to be able to change that and basically make it work the way our list view would not find a problem with, is by changing this name from tasks to this variable called object list. So if we do that, refresh, if we go back this side and refresh, we shall see that our objects will be rendered just like we see right here. So the default name of the list of items that we shall have in our context is actually going to be object list. But in case we want to update this and make it something that we may want, then we are going to basically undo our object list name right here and change it to tasks. And then what we shall have to do within our views is to go ahead and add one more attribute to our class. So that's going to be our context object name. And in this case, what I'll say is our context object name is going to be tasks. And when I save, hoping that our server is running, when you go back right here and refresh, we shall now see that our tasks are being rendered successfully. And now you see that the more we use these generic class-based views, the less we actually write view code, which is amazing. Now that you've been able to work on the task list view, let's go ahead and also look at the task detail view. So the task detail view is also one that's going to be of a display view. So the display view we're going to use in this case is going to be the detail view, and that is the one that basically shows you or retrieves one item from our database. So for us to be able to do that, we're going to go to our task detail view, and we're going to change this from our view, from inheriting from only the view class, to basically inheriting from our detail view class. Now when I come right here, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'll say class, and then we shall have the same name, which is going to be our task detail view. So I'll provide that name right here. And then instead of inheriting from our view, we're going to inherit from the detail view. So once we've been able to do that, we shall specify our model right here. And this model is going to be our task model. And then we are going to go ahead and also define the context object name. Now the context object name is going to be the name of that specific object as we want it in our context. So we shall say, instead of saying task, we shall just come right here and say context object name, and that is going to be our task. So if we save, actually that will be our task. It's going to be a string. Let me just correct this. So if we save, shall check our server is running. But if we go and try to access our home page, let's see what's actually going to happen. So if I refresh, shall now see that everything seems to work fine. But if we try to access our page, it actually takes us to our detail, which is working fine. So I think that's working because we have our task detail still defined here. So I'm going to remove this. And when I save, when you go back this side and you try to refresh, we shall see that our generic detail view, task detail view, must be called with a primary key or a slug. So we need to update our URL configuration. So if we go back to our URL config or our URL pattern, so I'll look for urls.py for our tasks app. We need to locate our task detail view. So our task detail view is here. And instead of using our task ID, we are going to use the primary key of that specific task. So I'm going to update this so that we require an integer that is a primary key. So I'll go ahead and save. And after saving, I'll go ahead and refresh. And now we see that task.detail.html does not exist. Now the reason as to why this is happening is that when dealing with this, then we have to also specify our template name, and that's how we shall be able to basically show the task detail view. So if we go ahead and try to undo and see the template, so our template name was detail.html. If we update and make this our template name, now I'm just going to copy what we have here and then provide it as an attribute to our class right here. So I'll basically go ahead and remove our class, that the one that we have here. So it also has a way of organizing templates if you want it to work without specifying the template name. But if you provide the template name now, when you refresh, we shall see that our template is being rendered for our task detail, just like you see right here. So basically you're seeing how these class-based views or the generic class-based views make it easy for us to be able to write our view code with very few lines, just like you see right here. So our template or our task detail view is actually done for now. Now that we've looked at the display category of views or generic class-based views, let us look at the edit category of these generic class-based views. So the first view class that we're going to look at in this category is going to be the form class. And the form view class is one that actually allows us to basically go ahead and render a form that's going to allow us to basically add or update or delete something from our database. So let's go ahead and look at that. Now the first form class that we're going to create, or the first form view class we're actually going to create, is going to be our task CreateView. So we're going to modify this task CreateView so that instead of being just a view class or a class that inherits from the view class, we change it so that it inherits from our form view, and then we basically go ahead and do some things to allow it to save a task to our database. So the first thing we're going to do is to go ahead. So I'm going to follow the same approach I've been using for the previous views by just coming right here and defining the class. So this class will basically have the name. So our name is going to be task CreateView. So shall also call this our task CreateView. And instead of inheriting from only the view class, in this case we're going to inherit from our form view. And once we've been able to do that, then we shall need a template class, or it's actually going to be a template name, which is the name of the template where the form will actually be rendered. Now in this case, I already have it here, so I'll basically provide it right here. Now all this was done in the previous videos. I would request you go and check it out. So I'm going to copy and paste our template name right here. And we shall also need the form class, which is basically the form that we're going to use to create our task within this form view. So if we go ahead and look at the definition of this, we see that it's a model form, and it's going to allow us to create tasks based on the fields defined on our form, or it's actually our models. So I'm going to go ahead and also copy our form class right here and then paste it right here. Now, once we have been able to do that, we get rid of our long view class right here. We now can be able to render this form. So let's go ahead and see if our form is being rendered. Now, hoping that our server is still running, which it is. If we go back to our app right here, we can now basically go ahead and log in to access our Create. So I'm going to try to access our Create post. It's actually Create Task View. So if I log in, it's actually a wrong password. Now let me try to log in with, this is actually going to be the password of this, and then I'll also provide the user and log in. So we now see that view task with keyword arguments task ID 5 not found. So what will happen is that the Django has not been able to find this task with the task ID of 5. So that means we also have to update our templates so that instead of using the task ID, we use our primary key, because we already updated our URLs which our tasks are using right here. So what I have to do is to go right within our template for displaying all our tasks, and then I'll have to change it so that instead of taking in the task ID as the argument or the path param, then we basically take in the primary key. If we refresh, we now see that our tasks are being rendered right here. So if we go to our create tasks form, we now see that our form has been rendered. However, we are not yet handling the submission of this specific form. So the way we're going to do that is by basically coming right within our views and then defining a certain method. Now, defining this method is going to be as simple as basically overriding the form valid method of this class. So I'm going to come right here and then I'll say def, and then I'm going to come and say form valid. So this is one of the methods that come with this FormView class, and what we have to do is to modify this and basically specify what will happen in case a form is valid or in case we submit a form with valid data. So I'm going to remove all these type hints, and then actually let me correct this. So I'll remove the type hints and then I'll also get rid of this. So what we need to do is to save the form and redirect to a specific URL. So in case we have sent a valid form, it will do exactly that. And in case we do not provide a valid form, then what will happen is that we shall basically re-render the form with validation errors. So the way we're going to do this is by calling form.save. And if you look at this method, it basically takes in the form, which is our form, which is the object of our form class, which is our task create form. And if we notice, this is actually a model form, so we can call form.save, and whatever data will be saved from this form will actually be an object of our task model. I hope I've explained that well. So if we go back right here and try to save, then we also need to specify the success URL, or where we shall redirect to in case we have successfully created our task. Now that is easy it is easy because we just need to add another attribute right here, which is going to be our success URL. Now our success URL is going to be our homepage. So let's go ahead and look at our URLs for our tasks and be sure of the URL. Now that's going to be on our root URL. So I'll just go back within our views, and then I'll say that our success URL is going to be / and that is going to work nicely. So let's go ahead and test this this form view class. So if we go back right here, so I'm going to refresh, and then I'll try creating a task right here. So in this case, I'll say go, let's say this is going to be go programming, and then let's say I am reading a book, on go lang. So if we go ahead and add this task, we shall see that this is added to our tasks and our form is actually working the way we expect it to. Now, the FormView class is not only specific to creating, it can also be used for updating. However, Django provides for us the CreateView generic class-based view, and this allows us to do creating only. So let's look at how that works. So we're going to modify this task CreateView, the one that we basically made a form view, so that it actually works for only creating. And the way we do that is by basically using the CreateView class. So let's go ahead and modify this. Now I'm going to repeat creating the same class just like I've been doing for the previous view classes. So I'll say this is going to be our class and it's going to have the same name, which is going to be our task CreateView. And once we've been able to do that, then the next thing is going to be for us to inherit from our CreateView. And once we've been able to inherit from our CreateView, now the next thing is going to be for us to specify our template name. Now I'll just copy what we have right here. So I'll copy our template name. So I'll just highlight it and copy it right here. So I'll fix the indentation, and once we are done with that, now the next thing is going to be for us to specify our model. So I'll just simply come right in here and say model, and our model in this case is going to be equal to our task model. And once we've been able to do that, now also need to specify the success URL. So I'll come right here and say that we shall have our success URL, and this is actually going to be equal to our slash. Now I don't know why this is not working. I think because I misspelled class. It's supposed to start with a lowercase c. And once we've been able to do that, now we can get rid of what we have right here. So I'll remove this class right here and then save. So when you go back to our application right here, if I refresh, we shall now try to access our create task. So we're now seeing that we are not specifying the fields attribute, which we need to specify, because this actually needs to know which fields it's going to use while creating the task object. Now, if we go back right here to our class, all we have to do is to basically add a field list. So this is actually going to be, so if we should check our task create form, the one we actually specified for creating our tasks. So I'll look for forms.py within our task app. And this has only the name and the description. In fact, I'll just copy what we have right here. If we go to our tasks, all we have to do is to update this and provide our list right there. So if we save, hoping that our server is going to reload and everything works fine. So if we go back to our app and we refresh, we shall see that our create task has been basically our create task view is being rendered successfully. Let us try to add some tasks. So if we say we want to learn some JavaScript, so in this case we may say we want to learn some JavaScript, and then we maybe say we want to read the book Eloquent JavaScript. So in this case we shall say we want to read the book which is called Eloquent JavaScript. So if we add this task, we now see that our task list is being updated accordingly, which means that our CreateView is actually working. Now the beauty with using a CreateView is you get to write less lines of code, and all you do is to just define your class and provide different attributes. So now basically get to understand why generic class-based views are better to use. They just provide you basic classes, and all these classes are just influenced by the way you define the attributes on them, just like you see right here. Similar to the CreateView, we also have the UpdateView, and this helps us to basically update objects. So what this does is to render a template and a form from where we update a specific object in our database. And let us look at how that works. Now, this is going to work for our TaskUpdateView, so I'm just going to simply come and try to modify it just like I've been doing for the other classes so that you guys can see the similarities. Now in this case, this is going to be our task update view. So I'll do the same thing, copy it, paste it right here, but instead of inheriting from view, we are going to inherit from update view. So what we shall need here is going to be our template name. So once we have our template name, we shall basically paste what we need over here. And then we're also going to need our model. So in this case, we shall say that our model is going to be equal to. So right here, what we need to do is to basically provide our model, which is going to be our task model. And once we've been able to do that, now this is just enough for us to be able to update our object. So if we go ahead and remove this long view, which is our update view, we shall now notice that if we go back to our app and we try to access our update task, in this case, we are now going to see that our generic detail view must be called with a primary key or a slug in the URL configuration. So that means we also have to update this in our URLs. Now, when I go back to our URLs, I'll go where we have our tasks. And in here, instead of having our task ID, I'm going to update this so that we have a primary key. And when I refresh, we shall also see that we need to have the fields attribute, and this is just basically going to define which fields are going to update on each of the task objects. If we go back right here and we modify that, that's actually going to be within our views. So we're going to go within our views and we're going to actually have the same fields just like the ones we have on our CreateView. So I'll copy those and also provide them right here. So if I save and refresh, we shall see that our update form is being rendered successfully. Now, after updating, we shall also need to redirect to a URL in case we've had a successful update. Now, we're going to also define that via the success URL attribute. And then we shall say that that is going to be our home page. So if we try to go right here, I'll refresh, and then try to, let's say, update this to Learn Java Programming, and then update, we now see that it will update our title right here. If we basically go back right here, we shall see that reverse for update task with keyword arguments task ID 5 not found. So that means we have to go back to that template and update this so that it actually uses the primary key as the path parameter. So if we go back to our task detail, I think that's in our task detail. So I look for detail.html, and instead of using task ID, we are now going to update this so that we use our primary key. So if we do that and refresh right here, if we try to update our task, we now see that it actually works. So it's working successfully. So let's say in 5 hours, if we try to update this, of course, it actually works. So this actually works. So our update view works. Now let us look at the delete view. Now the delete view is not so different. All we have to do is to go ahead in our views and change our delete view. So in here, we are going to change our delete view. So I'll just come right here and say that instead of having our delete view being this, then I can simply just copy what we have here, define it. So this is actually going to inherit from our delete view. So I'll just come and say inherit from delete view, and in here shall basically have a template, and you're going to find out why we need a template in this case. So just going to come and say that our template name in this case is going to be delete. So let me remove this space. Shall have delete.html, and our model, so in this case our model is going to be equal to task. And once we have this, then all what we have here is going to be trash. So we shall also add our success URL in case we've successfully deleted a task. So in this case, we want to redirect to our home page. Another thing we're going to do is to create this delete.html template, and we're going to see why it's necessary. Now if we go back to our templates right here, so I'm going to go within our templates, create a new file, and I'll call this delete.html. So once we have this, then in here, I'm just simply going to have a form that's very similar to the ones we use for creating and editing. Now I'll just copy what we have here, and paste it within our delete.html. Now instead of basically coming right here and saying create task, what we're going to do is to ask the user if they really want to delete that specific task. So we shall say, are you sure you want to delete this task? We can also basically provide the task name. So in this case, I'll basically put it in quotes, and I'll provide task dot name and then question mark. So in here, what we're going to do is that if we submit this form, we go ahead and delete that task from our database. Now, if we go back right here and we try to access our delete, hoping that everything is working fine, our server is running. So if we go back here and we try to access our delete task, we now see we actually need to also update this so that it uses a primary key. If we go back to our template for our detail, we shall now see that instead of having our task ID, we need to have our primary key. And actually, this will be, instead of task ID, we need to update this to primary key. And if we are to refresh, we now also, let's see, we also need to have this within our URLs updated to our, so we need to go to our URLs, and those URLs are the ones for our tasks. And in there, we have to use our primary key. So I'm just going to come right here and say primary key and then /delete. So if we go ahead and refresh, we're now going to say, are you sure I want to delete this task? Learn Java programming in 5 hours. So I'll also change this and make it delete. So I will just come and modify this from add task to, so let me look for the delete.html, which is here. So I'll just come right here and say delete. Maybe I'll also have to change its styling. So I'll say delete, and then when you go right where we have our styles, because I need to find out a different style for our delete button. So in this case, I'll call it delete button. So I'm just going to come right here and I'll look for the delete.html, and let me give this a class. And let's say this is going to be delete button. So if we go ahead and refresh, shall see that this is actually having value delete button. It's having some red outline right here. So if we delete, we now see that our task is actually being deleted, which is fine, which is working the way we expect. So let's have a quick look at our views and look at how we've been able to modify them. If you followed from the previous videos, you knew how long our view classes were. They were basically having HTTP methods, and for each of the HTTP methods, we're handling something. Now, when using generic views, we now see how easy this is. We just basically have a class and attributes that define that class. The way we have forms, fields, all that is to Django. So basically, generic class views allow us to follow an object-oriented programming approach to create views while also making our life easy. You write less code and be able to pretty much achieve whatever you want within a class-based view. I hope that at this point I've been able to convince you into using class-based views. We've been able to look at how to create them from function-based views. We've looked at the view class. We've looked at authentication views that Django provides and how they make it easy for us to deal with authentication. We've also dealt with the generic class-based views that basically help us to do most of the common tasks that get involved when we are dealing with Django templates or Django database objects. So I'd like you to do me a favor and leave a comment down in the comment section below. Tell me how you feel about class-based views and why you should not use them. Or if you love using class-based views, also go ahead and leave a comment down below explaining the reason as to why you love using class-based views. I remain Jonathan, and I hope to see you in the next video I'll make about Django. See you in the next one. Bye.